Baxter County Roundtable. I believe this is episode 47. Tonight we have Scott Flippo, our special guest. He's Arkansas State Senator. And we have Shane Little sitting in for Russ. And let me just say thanks to both of you for coming. Of course. We took off last week to show our respect for the fallen. And so here we are, we're back. Shane's going to tell us about some of our sponsors, and then we're going to get into the
That's right, thank you.
stuff.
And it's an honor for me to be here again, the number one fill-in host in Baxter County. I've got some things working behind the scenes to verify for that. That's just my opinion right now, but I'm having that validated.
I heard you were the best in the country. But
well, it's just Baxter County right now.
we haven't proven
I'm
it.
going for Baxter County first, then Arkansas, then the United States, and then the world.
You may be already there. We just have to verify.
Number one fill-in host, that's right. But this podcast is sponsored. We've got a couple of paid sponsors. The Baxter County Roundtable podcast is sponsored by Mountain Home Heat and Air. It's been voted the best in the Twin Lakes for 2 years in a row, 2024 and 2025. They're the largest Goodman dealer in the Twin Lakes area. So if you need any heating and air work, it's getting hot. We've had a very mild spring so far, but it's starting to get hot. And if your air conditioner is on the fritz, time to give Mountain Home Heat and Air a call. Their number is 870-425-HVAC. That's 870-425-4822. It's also sponsored by James Boyette of State Farm Insurance. Thank you. Since becoming a State Farm agent over 11 years ago, he's been focused on delivering real value to his customers. If you need some insurance, and we all need it, you can car, homeowners, condo, renters, insurance, personal articles, business, life, health, or even pet insurance. Give James Boyette a call. State Farm, the number for James is 870-425-4540. And of course, none of this would be possible without the generous help of the Baxter County Republican Committee helping getting this going. We want to thank the Baxter County Republican Committee for helping us out, getting this podcast going. And if you would like to participate in the local politics of this area and become a member of the Baxter County Republican Committee, I would definitely encourage you to do so. We'll give you some more information as we go along on how you can do that.
And you might even go to one of our meetings and have a good time.
That's right.
It's kind of fun a lot of times.
I'm there sometimes, and I'm probably the second most entertaining person there behind Joe.
That's right. Well, we're entertainers apparently. So anyway, well, thank you, Shane. Tonight, let's lead off by introducing Scott Flippo, our Arkansas State Senator.
All right.
Let's do the simple stuff first. Tell us who you are, where you come from,
Okay, yeah. My name is Scott Flippo, born and raised here in Mountain Home, and I've served District 23, formerly District 17, in the State Senate for the last just over 11 and a half years now.
And what area does that cover?
So currently that includes the eastern third of Boone County, all of Marion, Baxter, and about 95% of Izard and Fulton County. So the only part of Izard County that I don't have is Horseshoe Bend, all the rest of it. And then I cut out right before you get to Cherokee Village over there in Fulton.
Okay, so you've been here, how many terms?
This is my fourth term.
And you are now coming up, or the one you're in now is your
The one I'm in now.
Okay, and how many can you serve?
Oh, so I could serve 5.
You can serve 5?
But it's so. Well, I guess it's a good segue into term limits. So when I was elected in 2014, there was a constitutional amendment that was going to, do away with lobbyists taking legislators out to dinner, buying them tickets to ball games, et cetera, et cetera. But it also said that you could serve up to 16 years in any one chamber. Prior to that, you could serve 14 years in total. You could serve 3 2-year terms in the House, 2 8-year terms in the Senate, for a total of 14 years. But you couldn't serve them all in one chamber. So in 2014, that changed per a constitutional amendment. And then I think in 2019, the legislature, submitted another amendment to the Constitution to take it from 16 years to 12 years, and then it says if you sit out for 4 years, that you could run again with a blank slate.
Okay, well, so you could serve these numbers. You could
Everybody
serve
follow that.
You can serve in the House and the Senate for a combined period of time.
So now it is 12 years.
Okay, What does a senator do that a representative does not do, or vice versa?
We do the same thing. The difference between the senator and a House member, a state representative, is going to be the size of our district. So a state representative has about 28,000, 30,000 people in a House district, and the Senate district's going to have roughly 88, 90,000 people. And so it's not necessarily just geographical, the size of your area, it's just the population.
So is that why they refer to the Senate as the upper house, or is that just a misnomer?
No, so
There's you guys very special?
Well, we like to think that we are. So don't go into the Senate and and think that we don't think that we're the upper chamber. But the reason for the Senate, they say the Senate would be the upper chamber. I think would be the same premise for the federal level, is we have longer terms. So versus a 2-year, we typically get a 4-year. At the U.S. level, they have a 6-year term instead of a 2-year term for normal congressmen. And so it's supposed to be the more deliberative body. Now, you could leave that open to argument on whether or not the Senate is inherently always the more deliberative body. But that is at least the premise of the founders, for why we have longer terms. And then, of course, the Senate confirms and approves a certain number of the governor's selections, appointments to boards and commissions.
Okay, so you're a senator, state senator. Are you going to run in the upcoming general? Are you running?
I'm not on the ballot, so I'm in the second year of a 4-year term right now.
Okay. Oh, okay, I got you.
So I also see here that you served as the Senate Majority Whip and the Senate Majority Leader previously. Talk to us a little bit about what does the whip do?
So the whip gets to count votes, and specifically you count votes that for some of the higher profile bills that are important to leadership, governor, or a caucus issue. But you don't really have to whip the votes on a tax cut, at least not with a supermajority Republican legislature. And so, a lot of what what I did as whip, and it's one of those positions that you can kind of make it what you want it to be. And so what I learned from, one of my now colleagues, Senator John Payton, who was majority whip over in the House for, I think, 8 years before he came to the Senate. And a lot of times you go to a member and you ask them, where are you at on this bill? Are you a yes, no, leaning yes, leaning no? And they'll give you say, well, I'm a no because it goes against local control. And I'll say, well, we voted through 3 bills last week that went against local control. So what's the real reason on this one? And so what I really want to know is what's the real reason a member has what's their real point of concern with a piece of legislation? Is it the bill itself? Is it the sponsor, the House sponsor, the Senate sponsor that are just upset with leadership? And so, but getting the answers to those questions. It allows you to work with each one of your members because now you are more in tune with what their specific points of concern are. So I know if your points of concern with a piece of legislation, if it's not the bill, if it's just with the member that's running it.
How is that different from what you did as the majority leader?
No, majority leader is, you are hurting essentially, 29 or 28 feral cats. So there's 29 members of the Republican Senate caucus right now. And you're working with members to try to set caucus policy or caucus priorities. Mm-hmm. And everybody's got their own. And I spent 4 years in Senate leadership, and I figured out after 4 years that leadership was not really where I wanted to be. And the real reason is you spend a lot of time dealing with everybody else's problems, whether they're significant or petty and just kind of feel like they belong in junior high. And so
it really never changes.
Well, it's just what it is. And I don't think it's going to be a shock to any of your viewers right now. But how you be effective in the legislature is it's not your title. It's not whether or not you're in leadership or whether or not you're chairing a standing committee. It's your relationships and the quality of the relationships that you have. Do you have credibility within those relationships? And if you have that, that's where the real oomph is.
Gotcha.
And so, for me, it was getting out of leadership. I knew I didn't want to be the pro tem, which is the president, the leader of the Senate, and had no desire to want to serve another term as majority leader. It was a lot of work. We were coming off the heels of COVID. So government, state government was kind of shut down for about a year. The legislature was sidelined. And so everybody on my end was up in arms. We're going into ACES the last 2 years. And it was just this confluence of circumstances. And it was just, I'll tell you, it was miserable.
Well, how did you come to be that person? I mean, do they pick the best looking guy, or
obviously not, Joe? And I appreciate the sarcasm. Obviously, it is not based upon the smartest or the best looking in the caucus.
I mean, what term were you in?
So that would have been for 21 and 22 was when I served as a majority leader. and you run for these positions within the caucus. And so I had another colleague of mine who was running as well, and won by one vote. And I'll tell you, won both of my races by one vote. And so your colleagues in caucus, get to vote for you. And I actually had a friend of mine ask me a few years ago, what was more difficult, getting elected to the Senate or getting elected into leadership? And I was like, well, that's a good question. I said, probably leadership, because your colleagues really get to know you really well, because you spend, 4, 5, 6 months a year, or every 2 years with them. So they really get to know you.
Yeah.
But it is voted on by your colleagues.
Okay. How about what? When this term is over that you're in, do you have another one? I'm not.
I
that
could
good
do
at
one more
math.
4-year, yes.
And you anticipate that?
And
after?
so I'll make my decision after we get out of session next year. I've learned the hard way. Don't make any long-term, political plans until after you get out of, the general session.
So we're not getting any news here.
You're not getting any news out of me.
So
No.
the way the Arkansas government works, we're kind of in an off year right now, right?
So we did we have a biennial, and we have our general session, which is the long one. We pass the majority of the bills, and we're just coming off our fiscal session this year, which is 3, maybe 4 weeks, and we're just dealing with budgetary fiscal issues. And so that changed 18 years ago, I think, is when voters in Arkansas decided that there was a constitutional amendment, and they were going to vote to separate and do a general session and then a fiscal session. And for me personally, I'd rather, we're down in Little Rock during the general from January through early, mid-April. I'd rather just be down there for an extra 2 or 3 weeks and take care of the budgetary issues.
Is most of that work done now for this session, the fiscal?
Yes.
Most of that is done. So where do you go now? What do you?
So now it's just a matter of, working on issues for the next general session, which will come up next January.
Okay. Well, you have any? Were you getting ready to say something?
No.
So as far as an agency's budget, that gets taken care of, during the fiscal.
Okay. Well, I guess there's a lot that you guys should be talking about. I think, like, which you probably are, like data centers. That's pretty current news today. What's going on there? Anything exciting or interesting?
So Senator King actually had one of my colleagues, Senator King, had 5 bills during the recent fiscal to be taken up, and these were non-budgetary bills, and so they required, I think, 24 votes. I voted for 4 of the 5 or 5 of the 6. I forget how many he had in total. But the long point of that was to give more control back to where it should be, which is the local level. In 2023, I believe, the 23 session, we voted on a bill for crypto mining data centers at the very tail end of the session, and it carved out some special protections for them, and it really kind of tied the hands of local government. And so we've tried to incrementally address that as we've since then. And then Senator King's certainly been a champion on our end of trying to to really get down to the roots of it and put the decision back to where it should be, which is at the local level. So your cities, your city council, your mayor, your quorum court members, your county judge, they're on the front lines with the people in their respective communities or in their respective county. And right now, these data centers, I still don't know what gives a crypto coin. It's where it derives its value from. I don't know the process of how you even. Okay, so
I could go into it, but we would be here for a while.
well, please, it's and so in all of this, from what I understand, for especially like these data centers, I guess the need is now with AI, taking more focus, the need to storage more data, and but these facilities, they typically take a lot of electricity, and they can use a lot of water, and there is something that I read about a few months ago that there have this contraption that one of these data centers, and I'll just say one, I'm sure several of them use it, that a lot of them use a lot less water because they can filter it and recirculate it and reuse it instead of just taking new water every time. And the reason they use a lot of water is to try to keep the computers that are running 24/7, 365, keep those cool. If you don't, they make a heck of a lot of noise.
Well, how about
And they have a tendency to break down and melt down too if they don't get cooled.
And the data they're collecting, People like me want to know what kind of data is being collected. Are you collecting my personal information? And I
Yeah,
figure that's.
well, and so
I don't know if the local government is up to snuff to really watch that stuff.
Yeah, I guess from a matter
well,
of political philosophy, where do you sit on the vote the how much local control do you give them versus how much should the state have over it? Because then because the closer to the local level you get, you're going to have all of the political, you know, infighting and this and that and the other, where people get paid off and this and that and the other, and it, you know, on some level it shouldn't be that way. You know, I think the state should be at a level of control. So, you know, how do you balance how much
there's no
control?
perfect way, Shane, to balance that. And I think that's in the eye of the beholder on what issue do you think should be more of a state issue
So is
versus
it
a
more of a
local issue. And
situational
so
thing?
yeah, and I think it's a matter of perspective. So each individual could decide for themselves on what issue they think should be taken care of at the state level, or what they believe would be better addressed at the local level. As far as understanding, and I think this is the kind of a microcosm of where we are as a society right now. Of listening to understand. So there's a lot of things about data centers and crypto mining that I'm not fluent with. And most Arkansans aren't fluent with them.
Same
And
on
so
the
when we start
local
talking,
level.
so we start talking about these issues. This is a great example of data centers and crypto mining. Before we go down the rabbit hole, and this is kind of in hindsight, what we should be having is collectively is a conversation as citizens and as government about what it is, what it isn't, what it's going to take, why it's going to take this amount of electricity, how it's going to utilize the water.
Yeah, some sort of oversight,
And not just oversight, but
preparation.
I think a conversation where it's not a matter of I'm right, thus you must be wrong. So we've already kind of retreated into our respective corners.
Right.
So we just have an issue that could affect all parts of Arkansas, or all Arkansans. And so before we start talking about whether it's good or it's not, let's just have a discussion about the issue as a whole on what are data centers? What function what purpose do they serve? What
Well,
data?
I think that's largely incumbent on the people wanting to build them too. You know, it's a matter of education. It's like we're going to educate the public. This is what the data center is. This is what it does. This is what it's for. This is the economic development that it's going to bring to either to the local community, the regional community, or the national community.
And these are, you probably know more about it than both of us. Is this what is being used for AI?
The big thing right now, the big push is AI. And this is an international thing. You've got the big chip developers that are building these chips right now, and it's a race to the top. We're probably never, well, I won't say never. It's unlikely in the near future that we're going to have something what you would call an artificial general intelligence. But the tools that they've been able to build so far are actually just pretty amazing. And people get all concerned about it's going to take my job, it's going to do this, it's going to do that, and that's possible. There are some jobs that AI might make obsolete, but that is no different than it's ever been.
Yeah.
You know what? Oh my gosh!
Sure.
What, like back in the day? What are we going to do for the
.com.
horse and buggy
Well,
manufacturers?
yes, I'm sure the people that were breeding the horses for the Pony Express were not big fans of the
Right.
telegraph.
So is it, if I, as a technical expert here, my background is IT work. And I'd say, look, don't panic. It's just another tool. It's just another interesting information technology tool that's going to change the world in some ways, and in a lot of ways it won't. Because it's going to be there. I can pretty confidently say we're probably never going to have AI plumbers.
Right. And in the right people's hands, it's probably going to be an awesome thing. And likewise, bad people are going to use it for bad things, So you just have to stay on top of it.
Well, with any new technology, there's always good uses and bad
Yeah.
uses.
So, and that's true. And I've heard President Trump speak on this. It's probably sometime last year, but specifically about data centers, and talking about where they didn't want China or one of our adversaries to really have a a strong foothold. And I don't want to say but basically run roughshod over the United States and have all these data centers in China or in Russia. Because you asked earlier, Joe, what kind of data would they be storing? A lot of people care about their personal information. I'm one of them. I think it'd be a lot less secure in somewhere like China than it would be here. But also is AI, and we're just in this infancy level of it right now. I mean, I feel like it's just kind of working with MS-DOS in the 1980s.
Yeah.
And so we're just really at the entry level here. And where it's going to be in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, I don't even know that my mind can wrap around where it's going to be in 10, 15, 20 years. In 5 years, I think we're going to see a lot of leaps and bounds and see AI being used in different ways that right now we're not even thinking about.
Like you said, from DOS to Windows 11. I mean,
Yeah, it's a quantum.
You can't even.
It's a quantum leap, and I think that AI is like that on steroids, and it's gonna happen so quickly.
It's been a good thing. I mean, yeah, there are people using it for nefarious purposes, but overall,
Yeah, since we're talking about more of a national level, what are some national level political things that you've kind of got your eye on right now, or are you concerned about?
So one of the things, and I think a lot of Arkansans are paying attention to right now, just one example would be the SAFE Act, which is lingering there in the U.S. Senate. And we saw Ken Paxton get President Trump's endorsement in the runoff there in Texas and beat Senator Cornyn, I think a four-time incumbent down there. And one of the premises
That was shocking.
And so, well, in a runoff now, generally the people that show up to vote in a runoff are your more motivated, constituencies.
yeah.
And so, wasn't necessarily shocked, and to see Ken Paxton win by 30 points, I think it was. I think he likely would have won even without President Trump's endorsement, even though he lost the primary, I think, by 2 points. But to segue into, we were talking before we went on air this evening about the filibuster. And, President Trump's just been one of a number of presidents that has encouraged, his party's majority in the U.S. Senate to do away with the filibuster. And part of me worries about what we're giving up here, as a republic. And when we look at what's most important, is it the end result or is it the process? And I think the process of our founding fathers have kind of structured and set it up is to put in some checks and balances, and to specifically, for the minority. Because if you don't have any protections for the minority, then you really don't have any, liberties yourself. And so, I have some queasiness when it comes to doing away with the filibuster in the U.S. Senate, because I look at it like it's not unlikely that we're not going to have a Democratic president or Democrats running Congress soon. But as Joe was saying, Democrats are going to do it regardless. Whether Republicans do it right now, and I don't want to put words in your mouth here.
But whether it's moral or not, they're doing it. And the reasons they're doing it is, I suggest, is not moral, or I think it's just underhanded. That's just my feeling.
Government, power control more, and to say, yeah, there's probably a better word to use besides power, but political parties will use that so they can increase their foothold. And we all know that, you could look here in Arkansas where you got a supermajority Republicans in the legislature. We have all the constitutional offices. I think, over 90% of, county and city elected offices are held by Republicans, which is to say that we don't always agree, even if it's your party that holds, strong majorities or across the board.
Yeah, well, I mean, we should decide what we're going to have. Either we're going to have filibuster or not. You can't just, we got to get moral people in there to be our representatives, or it's going to change every time the tide turns.
Well, the filibuster conceptually is one of these things that protects the minority. Just because so the majority can't run roughshod over the minority and just bulldoze whatever their agenda is. And of course, the fear and the reason it's still there, at all on the national level is because, well, okay, both parties see the advantage in having that. We don't want, because we may not be in power all the time, so let's keep it. Well, the problem that I've seen is that come, one way or another, the Democrats typically get their way on the national scale. They either get it through the courts or whatever. So it's a matter of the Republican, the Democrats are probably going to do away with the filibuster at some point, and they'll probably pack the Supreme Court and all the others if they ever get the majority in Congress ever again. So
They will.
there's an argument to be made, but I'm with you. I'm like, ideally, you'd like to have some safeguards in place at the process of which we come to these laws that the legislatures are passing. It would be nice to have kind of a balanced approach and a rules-based system to get those things done. But it seems to me that the further and further we go into the future, it's just there's little to stand in the way of those in power just bulldozing right over the minority anyway.
And that's a scary, scary thought. I mean, I don't necessarily disagree, Shane, but to think that's where we are as a country and kind of society and just politically now.
Honestly, I think one way to somewhat remedy that problem is to fix the election process, which is kind of what we're talking about with the SAFE Act. So,
along the SAFE Act, I have not read it in its entirety, so I've just, what I've read online and what I've seen on the news. But the Constitution leaves the purview of elections to states for the most part. I'm certainly okay with voter ID, one person, one vote, be able to prove your citizenship. Zero problem with that.
one day election.
Mail-in ballots. I'm not a fan unless extreme circumstances. I mean, we would probably agree with what we would believe to be. Without defining every single circumstance, we could probably agree with what we perceive to be, reasonable. But what I don't want to see is I don't want to see the federal government get too much control over elections, because this time it might be something that Republicans like, but if Democrats take control of Congress and the White House, they could certainly do, to the other end of the spectrum and do some things that we would be very much against, and then use it and say, well, Republicans are the ones that started all this. They're the ones that opened this can of worms, and now we're just expounding upon it. And you just volley that ball back and forth.
Yep.
So every 2, 4, 6 years, one party, is out of power, and another party takes over, and it just kind of goes back and forth. And it's disheartening to think that big decisions, and not just as far as just legislation, but like the process that we're going to use in Little Rock, or in this case, we're talking about D.C. Like, this affects us all. And when I see liberals screaming about packing the Supreme Court, I haven't done a deep dive here, getting ready for tonight's show, but I'd like to go back and look at the last 20 years of any kind of high-profile Supreme Court decision. You almost always, it's one or two conservative justices lining with the liberals, and you think about how many times has this Supreme Court, said no to President Trump. I can't probably count on 2 hands. So enough. And there's things out there that they've stood up, they've told the president no on, or the Justice Department no on, that the left loves. But yet they still want to stack. They still want to stack it. They still want to add all these new positions. Why? Because they want to get their way 100% of the time.
And right away. They want to get it done right away.
And this,
they don't want the process to take place.
Begets to where I kind of am I think our founding fathers were pretty smart people, and we have a form of government that has served us pretty well for 250 years. And we start talking about changing significant parts of that, I do believe that it warrants us taking a step back, hitting pause, and discussing the reasons of why we want to do it. Let's have an honest conversation about why we're wanting to do it and why we believe that it's beneficial to our republic.
Honest discussion, that's the problem.
I know.
And I mean, because if the Republicans today said, we're stacking the court, we're going to go to the 13 or whatever the number was that the Democrats have picked, they would go stark raving mad.
Yeah.
But can you all think of a single time where you've seen a justice appointed by the Democrat side with a Republican or a conservative majority of the justices on any kind of significant issue that's gained national attention?
Very rarely.
I would really have to go back and look, but nothing's.
It's not unheard of, but it is a very rare thing. If it were a caucus, if you were to consider the Supreme Court as one, that the so-called liberal justices never break ranks.
That's right.
And it's always somebody, and I say, conservative. Who was it? David Souter was appointed by George H.W. Bush. And I don't think anybody would mistake him for Scalia or Clarence Thomas or anybody. But our Supreme Court for the most part, and I haven't always agreed with every decision. And I don't know any Arkansan. I'll speak for the two of you. I don't think you all have agreed with every decision. You're not supposed to agree with every decision. But to take disagreements with rulings from the Supreme Court and use that as a gateway into, we need to stack the Supreme Court, we need to add additional seats to it, whether it's 3 or 5 or 6. Well, that's just today. If the Democrats get their way, what about in 20 years?
So let me take that point and segue into something else that you would have a direct influence over as a state senator. The whole idea that the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, that is, sets precedent for the entire country. You know, one of the constitutional amendments that Mark Levin presented forth in his book, the Liberty Amendments, years ago, which he called for a convention of the states. And one of these amendments that he proposed would be to essentially, like, yes, a Supreme Court decision can stand, but like 3/4 of the states' legislatures can overrule that precedent. It doesn't change the decision in that particular case, but as far as precedent setting, it would do that. So, and there's lots of amendments that have been proposed out there. What I want to get, my question is for you, is how do you view the Convention of States process or possibility of getting something like that done?
So I've supported the Convention of States. Arkansas, joined that movement, and the legislature voted in support of that. I believe it was in 2021. Don't hold my feet to the fire, but I think it's either 2019 or 2021. And my late colleague, Senator Gary Stubblefield, was the lead sponsor on that, had carried that in multiple sessions and fallen short, and was able to get that done. The queasy part of me is to think that we're going to get 37 plus states together and that we're all going to agree that we're going to stick to these specific points or these specific objectives, and nothing's going to get tacked on or added onto that. Serving in government, having seen some of the inner workings of government, I have a little bit of unease with the think that, well, we're just going to do a convention of states, or we're going to have these 37 states, which is what it takes to ratify.
But there's a very high threshold to get there.
Right.
And it is in the Constitution
For a reason.
So.
But again, not to say that there couldn't be, electors or, in a convention of the states representing whatever state in the union that might have their own motivations for wanting to call for a constitutional convention. And it might not be the same reasons that, let's say, 28 states, have, sided together, and you cannot discount that you're not going to have 6, 8, 10 other states that said, you know what? Yes, let's have a constitutional convention, and let's amend the Constitution and ratify that. But we're gonna stick in these other things in there that are not necessarily objectives of the 28 Republican-led states, but these are going to be some priorities for some of the Democratic-leaning states. And so I just, I have a little bit of uneasiness with it, but it's there for a reason.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's why they set the threshold so high. It would be difficult to veer off of that. I mean, I'm not saying it can't happen, but.
I agree. No, as they say that it would take some work, because it takes 37 states to ratify. So that's a pretty high.
That's why I'm a little bit less worried about it, because let's even if we did get it going and we saw, okay, we got it going, the convention, all the representatives show up and they vote and do whatever, you'd still have to get the ratification of those 37 states before any of it became legit anyway.
If somebody would have told you gentlemen 10 years ago that we would be having a global conversation / disagreement on what constitutes a man and a woman, would you have thought that in your wildest dreams that would be like,
well,
it would have been like this central kind of tenet?
10 years ago, yes, I saw it coming. 20? No.
I mean,
it's nuts. It's crazy.
And it's actually lasted longer than I thought it would. I just thought it was going to be a flash in the pan, but they're not letting go.
Well, I hope the left doesn't let go of it, because it's been good for Republicans.
So far, it seems.
But what I talk about now is like, I Googled it a few months ago, and there was like 60-something gender variations, and that's what the point I'm making is like. Where does this ever stop? And the conversations that we're having today, I remember having a conversation with a good friend of mine when Supreme Court, legalized gay marriage. And I said, well, it's not going to stop with gay marriage.
No.
And there's the thing is like, there is no light at the end of the tunnel here. There is no end game here where we're just going to reach this point, we're going to stop. So and that's progressives. They continue to.
That's why you can't ever
Yeah,
nail them down on anything. What is it? Where's the line? Where would you be satisfied with? There is never a line. It just keeps moving. The goalpost keeps moving and
the
moving.
amazing thing is the electorate. I mean, when you say a man can have a baby or a period, and they go right along with it. I mean, they don't believe that.
The reason I say that I saw this coming is because I lived in Conway, Arkansas for about 30 years, and they call it the city of colleges. You've got the University of Central Arkansas there, Central Baptist, and
Hendrix.
And I'll tell you, I worked at like my professional job doing some computer work on the campus of Hendrix from time to time. Wow, those people. They are some of the most liberal leftist types that I'd ever seen, and they've got some crazy ideas. And when you get these Marxist types into the universities, well, that's the start of it, because they're spread out everywhere now. So you've got kids that are graduating from college now that have been fed this craziness, and it's not surprising to me that the world's in the state that it is now.
No,
it seems like it's starting to come back from the precipice just a little bit now, though.
I think it's. I would agree with that. I think it's still early in, but yeah, I think all colleges or universities are somewhat liberal. I went to the University of Arkansas back in the late '90s, early 2000s, and I remember one of my professors showing one of Michael Moore's documentaries, Roger and Me, about how horrible GM was, and just bashing on capitalism. And as a typical 19, 20-year-old, I wasn't paying a lot of attention, to all of this, and thank goodness, because it helped, make sure I wasn't completely brainwashed. But I think when people get out of school, when young folks, when they start a family, when they build a life, they get into business, and like real responsibility sets in, that's what got me to conservatism. It wasn't because I was brought up in a conservative or Republican household. My parents, my grandparents, I mean, it was really just my pathway in life and my experience in life that got me there. I voted for Ron Paul in the primaries in 2008. Thought I might be a libertarian. Turns out I have a libertarian streak, but I'm not 100% libertarian.
I think a lot of conservatives think they're libertarian, or at least partly libertarian, but you find out it's not really a viable political angle to get much done.
But I think the point there is you've got to put some thought into your position. Mm-hmm. Why do you believe in certain things? Why do you think this is good policy or bad policy? And so versus just what's being fed to you or how you were raised when you were growing up or what you were professors, try to, indoctrinate you into when you go to, college. At the end of the day, you need to be able to know what you believe, why you believe it, and it doesn't need to be contingent upon what the people around you are saying or what they're believing or what somebody on CNN or Fox is saying. But really be able to articulate for yourself why you believe in what you believe. So, for example, a colleague of mine in the legislature, the Democrat, and we were talking about gun control a few months ago. And I asked him, I said, well, and their thing was common sense gun control. All right, well, I'm all for common sense as long as I got to see the table gets to define what common sense is. Right. But for the premise of this conversation, they were talking about, well, no automatic weapons and universal background checks, close the gun show loophole, seller to sellers, still require a background check. Okay. So I'm like, so let's say we just do away with, all automatic weapons, which the Clinton administration did. There's a 10-year period. And, gun-related homicides continued to fall even when that, went away. But my question, my friend, is well, so if somebody goes into a school or a public building, grocery store, post office with a 9mm, but it's only a 9-round clip, are those acceptable deaths? If we're not using, an AK, and the person that shot him had a background check and was in legally possession of that firearm, it was not a high capacity long rifle.
Well, that's a common sense clip.
But it gets down to okay, so but if we're going to start talking about gun control, let's start with an end in mind. What's the acceptable number of gun deaths? And then where I'll get that from, it's the answer is 0. Mm-hmm. So how am I supposed to believe that if I was to go along, which I wasn't, we're just talking, it's so if we were to do something similar to that in Arkansas, universal background checks, no automatic weapons, and there is another shooting, you all are going to be my friends on the left. You guys are going to be okay with that because they weren't killed with an AK and the person that had it, got a background checked, No. the answer is zero. There's no acceptable number of deaths, and that is just an inherent thing. But the left will trick you into giving up rights under the guise of for the welfare of humanity or for the public good. And if you look, and I think I saw a statistic, it's been a while, the number of concealed carry holders in Arkansas that actually commit a crime, and specifically that, a crime with a gun, it's like less than 1%. I mean, it's not even 1%.
Like the amount of hair on a frog.
It's so nominal.
Yeah.
That I'm thinking, like, the people that the Second Amendment is important to, that can actually articulate why they believe in it and why they think we need to keep, like beyond just emotions, they're not out there committing crimes.
Well, I think that is a really good contrast between the left and the conservatism, people who have conservative beliefs. The conservatives believe the world is not perfectible, and we believe that people can take care of themselves. They can make their own decisions, and they should be left to do right or wrong. And when they do right, awesome. When they do wrong, they are punished. But the left wants to make everybody's decisions for them. Okay. And I don't want to live in that world.
I don't either. I think the gun control issue, we're all pretty much in agreement, and so is our crowd, our viewers. So I'd kind of like to move on. I don't even know if we finished the election integrity
Let's go to the
discussion. We had some issues here for Secretary of State, which are still being litigated. I don't know what do you know about that, and how do you feel? Do you think we have election integrity in Arkansas?
I do believe we have election integrity in Arkansas, and I've never seen the inside of these machines. They're not connected to the internet. Data's not transferred to New York to George Soros, and then comes back to Arkansas. There was 1,000 votes that separated Senator Hammer from Mr. Norris.
I don't have all the details.
Well, I think it was we're not holding. Yeah, I think it was roughly 1,000 votes.
Yeah.
That separated the two in the runoff, and I sat at the election headquarters. Russ was there, as a matter of fact. It's been 5 or 6 weeks ago. Senator Hammer asked me to do that, just watch the ballot recount. Weren't even counting ballots, and there for over 2 hours, and that was just the runoff ballots for Secretary of State and the sheriff's runoff here in Baxter County. And so in no county, I think there was 5 counties that the Norris campaign, identified for a recount, and the hand count came back and matched exactly the machine count in each one of those instances. And so I'm comfortable with the outcome. In full disclosure, I was supportive of Senator Hammer, but had the election gone the other way, I would have accepted that result as well.
What is the claim here? Do you know, as far as
So I want to and don't hold my feet to the fire. I believe they've latched on to Saline County and possession of the ballots, I don't think they're questioning the chain of custody. Thank you. I don't think that they are contesting the outcome in Baxter County or in the other 3 counties. I believe the issue, the loss, the courts right now, is specific to Saline County and the chain of custody with those ballots.
Okay.
I hadn't planned on asking you this.
Well, let's go there.
As an IT guy, I have been brainstorming for years about a potential way to solve this problem, because you've got 2 contradictory things that you're trying to solve here. You want an anonymous ballot, but you also want traceability. those are antithetical to each other. If I've got some ideas that I'd be interested in discussing with you potentially offline. See what you think about it. About having a public ledger, but where all of the ballots cast would be visible, and you as a voter, I could go and check and make sure that my vote didn't change, but it would still remain anonymous. So I think because we've got a lot of people. Oh my gosh, we've got people in this county that are really gung ho about paper ballots.
Absolutely do.
And I understand why. but I also understand, oh my, with as many people as we've got now, that's just not a real feasible thing. And what most people don't realize, there are paper ballots. It's a machine that prints the paper ballot, and you can look at it,
Review it.
when it prints it off, and you can verify that it is what it is. Well, I guess where the mistrust comes in is the counting of it. So I'm thinking if there is a way, for us to combine the best of both worlds, and I've got some ideas about this. I'm not ready to present them yet, but I'd be, I think there's a way that we can use technology to get the best of both worlds, and people could have the visibility and the trust in the election system that they deserve.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many other little things going on. Like, it takes a month to count all the ballots. And I mean, of course, I don't trust that system. I don't care even if it's hand counted. I don't. 2 weeks later, you're still counting votes. There's a problem somewhere. And you got to resolve that stuff too before you're ever going to have people feeling comfortable with the election.
Right. And there's another thing that I wanted to make sure that I asked you about before that brings it back home to Arkansas here. There's this, and Judge Liddy brought it up a few weeks ago when we were interviewing him on the podcast. There's this ballot, I think it's a ballot initiative coming up about the economic development. Number three. Are you familiar with that?
I am.
And where do you sit on that?
So I supported it, but I see both sides of that. And the reason I supported it was because I was comfortable with that decision getting made by the people. And then should that be adopted, and the Arkansas voters support that in November.
Tell us a little bit about what it actually does.
So it allowed the legislature to create a fund to support economic development. But before that, which right now we're prohibited from doing, before that, it would take, the county and the quorum court and the judge, or if it's in a city, the city council and the mayor, to pass a resolution to quantify that, Russellville is going to be an economic development district. And they could define, within the city limits of Russellville where that's going to be. If it's out in the county, it would be up to the JP and the quorum court, the quorum court and the county judge. And so some places are going to want it, and other places aren't. And I think that's just to be expected. But as a conservative, when I look at the yin and the yang, is government weighing into the private sector. And taxpayer dollars being, going to one industry. What about to this industry? So if you're going to bring in potentially 500 to 700 jobs to Arkansas, what about the person that's, got a used auto body shop with net revenues of $480,000 a year with 3 employees? What are they getting?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. And that's a fair point.
I agree with you.
So, and therein is, I don't have the exact answer that's going to appease both sides. I don't think that I'm supposed to. And I appreciate about this evening's conversation is that's exactly what we're having, is a conversation. And certainly as an elected official, I think it's important for somebody in my position to be able to point out two sides of a coin. And
that's why I asked you.
And I think because there are legitimate reasons and conservative rationale that applies to conservative orthodoxy. When you look at taxpayer money going to help the private sector, that is a legitimate issue that I think that people that would disagree with me on on Amendment 3.
My problem is I don't think government should be picking winners and losers. They need to stay as far away from that as possible. I mean, they have a part to play, which is making the playing field even for everyone,
sure,
not just the big boys. That's where I stand on that.
No, and I think that not just Arkansas, but that America as a whole they're used to seeing the playing field tilted towards the powerful, the people that have the deeper pockets, the corporations, the industry, and so for good reason. Their line of thinking is like, well, how does this stand to benefit me and my small business? If you're an Arkansan and a small business owner, that is a legitimate question and a point of concern that any citizen could have.
And another angle for this is, and this would tie in, I want to give you an opportunity to talk about this, is how that initiative and other policies, taxation, everything, all levels of government in Arkansas and how they compare to the surrounding states. Like, because I know that you've been either sponsored or voted for some legislation, to reduce the income tax level here in Arkansas recently. So it's like, all right, because we've got all of it, all the surrounding states, we're competing with them on some level for level of taxation. Texas, for Pete's sake, doesn't have an income tax at all, or at least not, at a normal income level. So how do we compare to some of our competing states in the area, and how do you try to balance that?
I think Arkansas is in a very good position to compete. You never want to say that there's no room for improvement. I think a large challenge that we face is a skilled workforce. I mean, you could have all the tax policy into place, but a large employer is not going to to move into your state if there's not a skilled workforce in place to help in order to meet that need and to meet that demand. So we've lost out on I think it was Nissan 9-10 years ago. We're looking at putting a plant there in South Arkansas that ended up going to Mississippi, I believe. But having the people,
Mississippi's just overflowing with skilled workers, I hear.
and there were some logistical things that played into their hand as well, as far as right there close to wherever it went was close to the Mississippi River, interstate. There was some
easier to get raw
yeah,
materials in. Yeah.
So, but no. As far as how we compete with other states, we're in a good position. Naturally, people are going to look at the income tax rate, affordability. Arkansas is a very affordable state. But if you're looking to relocate here to do business, or are you looking to relocate here because you're looking to retire? So people look at different metrics when they're looking to locate. But for business purposes, a competitive tax policy and a skilled workforce. I mean, that's the two things that you have to have, and you could have the best workforce in the world, but horrible tax policy, and you're probably going to miss out. You got to have them both.
Okay, I have something that's a sensitive subject, but it's important to Baxter County, and I know that you know something about this.
All right.
I want to know how much you know and what's going on. We have an incident. Well, an ongoing incident where this young boy, I believe it was locked in a bathroom, sleeping on a skid, and I mean, just a horrific story. And now something a little different, but another abusive situation in Marion County with the Mansons, I believe was their name.
Masons, yeah.
Masons or whatever their name was. What's going on with that? This to me is a very urgent matter, and I read somewhere today, as a matter of fact, or maybe in the last couple of days, that it's not really going to be addressed properly, and maybe I'm wrong, till like 2027. This is something that I think needs to be addressed like yesterday.
Yeah. So, the case with the young boy here in Mountain Home was just a complete and total systematic failure at all levels. But you know what? It's always easy to put I will say from the legislative level to DHS, the executive level. I mean, I really think that it's just across the board, because there were questions that I could have easily, I could have asked that I didn't ask. And that's I think a lot of frustration with government is it's so easy just to identify, well, it's this agency or it's this other group of people, and it's the other branch of government that's the root of this problem. Collectively, I think that all of us in state government, on one level or the other, have failed.
It keeps going on, though.
And so there was 29 calls. There was 29 calls, and I can't, for the purpose of this conversation, we'll keep it to the state. There was 29 calls that were made from mandatory reporters. So these are going to be like school nurses, teachers, counselors. One of whom I know personally, and that these calls started when this family lived over in Northwest Arkansas and continued when they moved over here to Baxter County, and none of them, they were all deemed as non-credible.
Yeah, but what's being done now? We know that it's credible. What's
So now is to look at, it's like working with DHS. One of the problems that I see is like the state police operates the child maltreatment call center, but it's under the umbrella of DHS. And so there are things that we're looking at to do, like with rule changes through DHS, through state police, that that would not take legislation. So, for example, this family that moved from Illinois over Marion County, the Mason family, the father and son had been arrested, charged, and convicted of felony sex crimes when they were in Illinois. Okay? So they had served prison time,
Oh, really?
both of them, while they were in Illinois. Now, when it comes like to fast forward to their time in Marion County. So, if you call DHS and there's already somebody and there's a minor living in a household, and the person in that household, whether it is your parent or just an adult that lives in that household, and they have been charged or convicted of a crime against a child, or I would just say against a sex crime in general, that should heighten an automatic investigation. They were building a case on the Mason families. I was like, so there was some animal neglect or animal abuse, but the bigger thing was the kids that lived there. There was a young girl that lived there. She was raped. She was 10 years old at gunpoint. And so one of the a lady that lived over there.
We have agencies in Arkansas that dropped the ball. We agree with that, correct?
1,000%. And so here's the thing: it's like, we got to do better about where the immediate danger is. Right now, we simply don't have a place to put all the children that would be in need of. We don't have enough foster families, let alone short-term, temporary, places to put kids. And so the decision comes down to like, well, they might not be raising the kids the same way that I would, but they're not abusing them, neglecting them sexually, So, but this is government mentality. And so, not every kid needs to be removed from their family, because I disagree with how they're being. But what we're talking about here is pedophilia. It's sexually abuse.
Pretty clear cut.
Yeah, no. And I don't want to. So from within that,
I'm just trying to urge you to. I know you're involved in this. I mean, legislatively,
so there. Yeah,
I want you to do whatever you
can.
No.
There are a few things that I can't talk about, but
this has to be addressed immediately.
But, yeah. And it can't get addressed with legislation until January of next year, unless the governor calls us back in for a special session and puts this on the call, or 2/3 of the legislature, votes to put it on, to add it to the agenda. Okay. But in the meantime, there are things that we can do with DHS, with state police, as far as looking at their internal rules and process for how these cases are handled. And some things could be handled with a rule change and would not require legislation. Now, you would want to codify that into law.
Do we know that
in the long term?
Being addressed?
Yes.
Okay, that's my concern.
Because here it is. Nobody in this room, nobody listening to this podcast, and nobody in this state, when you hear about these cases, and this young man in Mountain Home, 29 calls to the child abuse maltreatment,
that's a big ball drop.
He wasn't being abused, he was being tortured.
Yeah.
We should call this what it is. I mean, you just say abuse is,
yes.
But this was torture over a prolonged period of time, and how this came to light was Mountain Home Police Department actually responded to a call from at the apartment complex where they were living to one of the neighbors above or below this apartment. And so they knocked on the door. The parents weren't there. One of the kids answered the door, and so they go back in the bathroom, in the master bath, and they see the doorknob on the outside was affixed to something else, and locked this young man in the bathroom, and they get it open, and he's in there nude and on a wooden crate. Had not been fed.
It's astonishing.
And this is not just a matter of like he missed a meal or a couple meals or funds ran low. I mean, this was torture.
Yes, it was. Well, anyway, that's just that.
And so a fundamental thing, yes,
I'm gonna stay hot on that one, because that's a big deal in my
because
mind.
Listen, I don't know anybody that is okay with children being assaulted, tortured, sexually abused, any of that. Just like I don't know any gun owner that's okay with the innocent loss, the loss of life, for no reason whatsoever. I don't know that person that's not okay, that's okay with this kind of conduct happening. And the state should never look at it and just say, well, we can only do so much. At the end of the day, when you look at these cases that you've identified, I mean, these are atrocious.
Well, I hope you follow up on this because
Oh, yeah,
this is important to me.
What's important? Listen, it's important to a lot of people. You can't go back and undo what's happened, and that's
for
the
sure.
thing. But like moving forward, to have a process that hopefully works a little bit better, because at the end of the day, government can't prevent every illegal activity, and we understand that. But when we can get ahead of the 8 ball, especially with these creeps and pedophiles and degenerates that for some reason have minor children living in their homes,
Yeah,
and make sure that there's a government agency.
We're so far behind the 8 ball on this. It's just startling, startles me. But anyway, I couldn't help myself. I had to. Bring
No,
it
and
up.
I'm glad you did, Joe.
I want to give you one more opportunity to just talk about big picture here and your career as a senator. You know, what are some of the highlights and the lowlights, you know, that you've experienced over the years?
I will take I won't say a low light, but a great learning experience that I had was in September of 23. The governor called for a special session. The main agenda item on that was a FOIA bill, and this was my 9th year. And they had asked me the day before I was leaving on a trip, an RV trip to Montana, and I was going to be gone for 10 days. And so, I said, let me think about it. And the next day I get a call from the governor's office, like, hey, if you thought I was like, okay, it's security for the governor's kids, the governor's mansion, okay, I'll be the lead sponsor. Well, my first year was I didn't ask to read the final version of the bill before I agreed to be the lead sponsor, which that's completely on me. That's my fault. So I come back from this trip and we go into our special session. And I told the governor's office and members of her staff and leadership, it's like, hey, the votes aren't going to be here. I'm talking to them. It's like, and this is going a little bit far. And what I learned in that is our state government, and I'd even go as far as to say our republic, was working the way that our founding fathers intended, because this was not big business. This was not political parties that stopped that FOIA bill. This was rank and file citizens. I heard from people that never reached out to me not a single time in my first 9 years in the Senate. And this was the issue that I got more calls on that single bill in 2 days than I probably get in a general session, which is a lot. And that's from across the state. And so what I mean is, like, my colleagues and I in Little Rock in the legislature were actually hearing from our constituents back home, and not just members of our county committee or for the people that contributed to our campaigns, but we're hearing from people across the board, the far left, the far right, and they were the ones that said, listen, you know what? What we want is transparency, and we don't care who's wielding the reins of power, Republicans, Democrats, doesn't matter. We want more transparency, not less. And if there's some things that come with leaving the current FOIA bill in place, which Arkansas is kind of like the standard for a lot of states, and that came up with Governor Rockefeller was a champion of that back in the 60s. And so the message that I heard from people loud and clear was, we want more transparency, not less, and we don't care who's wielding the reins of government. And that's fair. As far as a highlight, one of the things I was proud of, there's several, but one to end it on was to keep the neighbor's landfill, closed. And we were able to get legislation done, and it was a colleague of mine that came up with the idea, so I'll give him the credit for the idea that, before a landfill could be sold, if they had received any public monies, which the neighbor's landfill had received more from the post-closure trust fund than probably all the other landfills combined or solid waste districts combined. But before they could be bought out, or before you could enter into conversations, that money had to be repaid. Well, that was about $18 million for our landfill, which was a pretty big barrier to entry for LRS, which was the trash company that was looking to purchase it. And so to tie into government, getting involved in the private sector, when we bought that landfill, we should have never done it to begin with, but we did. But keeping it shut down,
good thing.
Was a very good thing.
Yep.
God, I don't think you'd find many people
I didn't.
here.
Well, trust
You'd
me.
find
I mean,
none that would
I heard from
disagree
the
with that.
Democrat county committee, Republican county committee, and all points in between, they want that landfill shut down.
Okay, we're running out of time here. Let me start by saying thank you for joining us. Hope you'll come back.
I will,
because we got a bunch to talk about. Shane, thank you for coming.
Pleasure to be here.
And
Number one fill-in host in Baxter.
You're like number 3 fill-in host. I wouldn't say number 1, but you're top 3 for sure.
Number one
Shane.
and rising. if that's possible.
That's right.
So if you read the sponsors again.
Yeah, just to remind everybody, thank you for watching at home or wherever you happen to be. We're broadcasting, we're live streaming from our secret underwater lair under Norfolk Lake. This little building, we move it around every time. So right now we're deep under the waters of Norfolk Lake in our bunker. And we couldn't afford to do that sort of thing unless we had some generous sponsors here. It's sponsored by Mountain Home Heat and Air is our first sponsor. For all of your HVAC needs, it's getting hot, it's time for you to get a health checkup on your HVAC system, on that air conditioner. If it's old, you might want to give them a call. The phone number is 870-425-HVAC. That's 870-425-4822. Also brought to you by James Boyette with State Farm. He's been an agent for over 11 years for all of your insurance needs. That's auto, homeowners, condo, renters, anything you can think of.
Pets?
Pardon?
Pets?
Pets too.
Oh,
Pet
yeah.
insurance.
Awesome.
And you can call him at 870-425-4540. Also, a big, huge thank you to the Baxter County Republican Committee for generously helping us get this podcast started.
Okay, a couple of quick announcements. Quorum Court, first Tuesday each month, 5:30 p.m., Baxter County Courthouse. City Council, first and third Thursday, 5 p.m. at City Hall. Republican Men's Club, first Thursday, 11:30 a.m. at the Elks. City Planning Committee, second Monday, 1 p.m. at City Hall. County Planning Committee, second Tuesday, 11 a.m., Baxter County Courthouse. A&P, Advertising and Promotion, third Thursday, 3 p.m., City Hall. School Board, third Thursday, 6 p.m., Admin Building on Rodeo Drive. Airport Advisory Committee, I think I got it right that time.
I think that's correct.
They meet every 2 months, and that's or as needed, and we don't have a specific date on the next one. And finally, Baxter County Republican Committee, last Tuesday each month, 6 p.m., VFW. Thanks again, Mr. Flippo.
Thank you very much, Scott.
My pleasure.
And Shane, thank you as well. And
Enjoyed
to
it.
all